everyone, my name is Shauna in case you don't know, and welcome back to another video. I'm going to be ranking Comic-Cons in today's video, but before I get into the content of this video, I need to give you an update on my dog because this could change my filming schedule and cause me to have to take a little break. So the last time I gave you an update on my dog was, I believe, at the start of September in my August wrap-up, and at that point my dog had a kidney infection and I was really scared, and I am still really scared, and I'm trying to just like not think about it and distract myself, you know? So the kidney infection is gone, but her kidney levels are really bad, which means that she is starting to have kidney failure. Yeah, it sucks. I think she's like 14 maybe? Yeah, 14-ish. It just really sucks. Had her since I was 10. Yeah, it sucks. And I don't know how long she's left, and nobody knows, and we are currently like struggling to get her food that she'll want to eat that'll help her feel more comfortable at the time that she's left. But yeah, it's really hard. It may change my filming schedule a little bit because I may need to like take a break. But anyways, I'm just gonna like move on from that for today's video and just talk about the content of the video, but I did want to give an update since it will potentially change my filming schedule, and because I know that some of you know about my dog and have been like sort of following a little bit along. Oh my gosh, I need to wipe my eyes. I should have given the update at the end of the video because now I'm like gonna have puffy eyes for the rest of the video. Okay, now on to the content of the video. I'm sorry that I like cried, but I needed to give an update on my dog. Okay, so basically there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 10 different conventions that I've gone to. Like obviously I've gone to some of them multiple times, but there's 10 that like stand alone as different conventions. And I have a lot of thoughts on them, but like I haven't really known the best avenue to sort of talk about my thoughts on them because I don't want to like hate on conventions because all conventions have problems, but all conventions also have like good things about them. So I thought ranking them would be a really good way of like letting all of you know which ones are worth going to, letting all of you know like which ones you should avoid and stuff like that. Some things that I considered when I was ranking these are accessibility. So is there good American with Disability Act accommodations? And it really varies from convention to convention. Like some are like super accommodating and will go out of their way to be super accommodating and friendly to people with disabilities, and some conventions say that you're faking. I had that happen recently, so yeah, it's really varied with accessibility. And then I'm also looking at the community. So I personally enjoy when different Comic-Cons have a community feel to it. I'm also incorporating in cosplays. Like if there's a convention that barely has any cosplays, and it is a convention that people normally cosplay at, it's probably gonna be a little like lower down on my ranking because I love it when I'm in a community that's filled with other cosplayers, and I know that a ton of people who go to conventions want to go to conventions just to meet other cosplayers. I'm also taking into consideration the celebrity guests who are invited. This includes authors, actors, YouTubers, comic creators, anything along those lines. I'm taking into account the communication that we had from the convention before and after the convention, and the communication from the staff at the convention. I'm also taking into account the price of the conventions. So I think I'm going to start from my favorite and go all the way down to my least favorite. There's 2 conventions on this list that no longer exist. One of them goes by a different name now because they were bought by a different company, and the other one sort of went bankrupt. But I'm going to include these 2 that either are bankrupt or that their name isn't the same anymore because they're bought out, especially the bankrupt one, because if that one ever comes back, like avoid that one at all costs, okay? Okay, so the first one on my list, my absolute favorite convention, is LeakyCon. I've gone to LeakyCon 3 different times. I've gone to it twice in Dallas, once in Los Angeles, and I'm going to be going to it in Denver, Colorado next month. So LeakyCon is a Harry Potter specific convention, so it's definitely not for everybody because they aren't going to be getting big actors. I mean, they have gotten Alison Sudol, Dan Fogler, and Tom Felton before, but that's like very rare for LeakyCon. Normally they get more smaller Harry Potter actors and other people that worked behind the scenes on the set that only Harry Potter fans would appreciate. So if you're not a Harry Potter fan, it's really not worth going to because it doesn't include like big name guests. The things I love about LeakyCon is that it is the most accommodating convention in the entire like universe. They go out of their way to be like overly accommodating, and it is very nice, and people there will actually like talk to you if you're in a wheelchair, which is something that you don't get at a lot of other conventions, because at a lot of other conventions they see you have a disability and they just ignore you because they don't know how to deal with you. LeakyCon has some of the best panels of all the conventions that I've gone to. The panels are for broad things in the Harry Potter universe and for very specific things. There's something something for every single fan. And something about LeakyCon that I really appreciate is that it sort of reclaims the fandom from the problematic author. So it's completely accepting to the trans community there and to the whole LGBTQ plus community as a whole. I think price-wise it's fairly reasonable. You get a lot of the price. I think that the marketplace is a little bit lackluster compared to other conventions, but there are some very good gems in there. I think LeakyCon is definitely my favorite. There's great cosplays there too, and there are some cosplays that you will only see at LeakyCon since it is such a specific niche at this Comic-Con. So for example, you may not see a ton of Harry Potters walking around at LeakyCon, but you will see very obscure characters that you can appreciate if you are a hardcore Harry Potter fan. LeakyCon also has great communication. The only issue that I've ran into them with communication is I accidentally bought an autograph and they wouldn't let me switch it out for a photograph, even though I'd technically be giving more money to the actor by getting a photograph. It's partly my fault, but I do find that communication to be a bit like odd because most conventions allow types of changes like that. That's the only issue I have with LeakyCon. LeakyCon otherwise is a great convention that I highly recommend that all Harry Potter fans try to go to at least once. It travels around, so it went to Dallas 2 years in a row, but that's very rare, and I think it's because in 2018 the Dallas one like sold out and there was tons and tons of people going, so they're making a lot of money from it, so they decided to go 2 years in a row. But I don't think that it generally goes to the same places over and over, at least in the time that I've been aware of LeakyCon, because I've been aware of LeakyCon and sort of in the LeakyCon fandom since 2016. Next one on this list is one that I considered not including in this, but technically it is a Comic-Con. This is VidCon. VidCon is a YouTube specific Comic-Con. There isn't very many cosplays. There is a cosplay contest, but if you cosplay there, you're very standing out because it is specifically just YouTubers. I think something that's so great about this is in the like Artist Alley marketplace area, there are things that you can do for free. So it's a convention that if you get in there, you can still do things even without buying more stuff and spending more money. They have great options of food selections at VidCon. They have a great lineup of guests. Now, sometimes they do invite problematic guests. I mean, there's so many problematic YouTubers, and I feel like it's hard for the people in charge of the convention to keep track of it all. VidCon doesn't have too much of a community. I mean, there is like small niche communities in there, but when I went, I didn't get that community feel. I just had fun having the events. There's tons of places for photos. It isn't necessarily like a Comic-Con like comic guest and cosplay, but it is a Comic-Con in the sense that it's a convention around a fandom, but this fandom is specifically YouTube. I don't have any information for you about accessibility there. When I went to VidCon, I went in 2018, and at the time I didn't really understand the American with Disabilities Act, and I just sort of like suffered through not feeling well, so I'm not sure how their accessibility is. Price-wise, I would say that it's actually really worth your money since there's so many free things that you can do, and at least when I went in the past, you didn't have to pay for photo ops and autographs, so it's really worth the price. They also have good communication, letting you know all the guests, letting you know where everything is. I think it's a great convention. I think everyone should go to VidCon at least once if you are a fan of YouTubers, specifically big YouTubers, because generally you're going to be seeing the bigger YouTubers as guests there as opposed to like smaller, more niche YouTubers. Like you aren't going to see small specific Harry Potter YouTubers there, but you will see like Joey Graceffa, you will see like Colleen Ballinger, all of those big names. The next one on the list is Emerald City Comic Con. Emerald City Comic Con ranks in number 3 because it has the absolute best lineup of guests that I've seen of any convention. I mean, heck, the first year I went, they had Rupert Grint. That was a dream come true for me. They have possibly the biggest selection of the marketplace and vendors because the marketplace and vendors are split over 2 floors. There is like everything imaginable there. They have good communication before and after the event, and they have good communication at the event. It is a little bit spendy, but I think it's because it's such a huge convention. The first year I went, the tickets sold out like that, so if you want to go to Emerald City Comic Con, I recommend you buy your tickets as soon as possible. I mean, the attendance levels have been down a little bit because of COVID, but once it gets back to its full stride, it's gonna sell out like that again, and I feel like it has a potential to turn into like the next San Diego Comic-Con, like the next biggest convention in the country. There is a little bit of a community there, but it's more like a cosplay community, and there is a good place where a lot of like cosplayers and photographers meet up and they take pictures, and that part is always so fun. It's in this like courtyard outside the main convention center. The biggest issue with Emerald City Comic Con, at least for me, is that it is split over multiple buildings, which unfortunately if you're in a wheelchair that makes it really challenging, and if you have a disability where you get fatigued really quickly, like I do, it makes it really hard to go from building to building to building to climb up different flights of stairs, and occasionally the escalators have been out and like I've had to like go this weird route to get there. Like they literally took us in what seemed like a fire escape once to get to the photo op area because the escalators were out. It's a little bit chaotic. They are pretty good at accessibility, like that is fantastic. They do a great job with that. I mean, it's not perfect, okay? Nothing can compare to how amazing LeakyCon is at accommodating people with disabilities, but I still think they do a great job. So Emerald City Comic Con ranks in number 3, and I think if you are traveling to meet big name guests, then Emerald City Comic Con is the place to go. Next on this list is Rose City Comic Con, which is the one that I've gone to the most. I've gone 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2021, 2022. I've been 7 times. That's the convention that I've gone to the most number of times. Rose City Comic Con is my local convention. It is the one that is close to me. It is one that feels most like a local Portland convention, because some of the other ones that visit Portland feel more like traveling ones and a little less local. I think Rose City Comic Con does a great job at getting guests. Rose City Comic Con could improve with accessibility though. I think they do better than some other conventions, but they aren't perfect. Specifically, when I went to Rose City Comic Con this year, which when I'm filming this, it was last weekend, they had me take a chair and they had me stand up and move the chair every time the line moved, which my issue is a positional thing, so whenever I go from sitting to standing, it increases my risk of passing out, so I wasn't feeling great, okay? But compared to other conventions, they did pretty well. They do great with photo ops accommodations, but not so great with autograph accommodations. They also have a retro game arcade, which I think is really fun. They also have a video game arcade, which is great, so there's things for everybody. There's tons of comic artists. There was a lot of authors at this last Rose City Comic Con. I think as this convention is growing, it is getting better at satisfying all the different niches of fans that go to Comic Cons. Price-wise, it is getting a little spendy, but if you can, they do release early bird tickets, and if you can't get the early bird tickets, it is such a good deal. You save so much money. I mean, technically, you can only get like a weekend pass or a VIP pass, but you save so much money, and if you wait until the last minute, like, it's gonna suck to have to pay that much. So if you want to go to Rose City Comic Con, buy the tickets way in advance. There is some communities there that are pretty strong, like the community for cosplayers is pretty strong. I think Rose City Comic Con also has great communication, and there is tons of great cosplays there. So I would say that Rose City Comic Con would rank number 4 out of all the conventions that I've gone to. Next up is Weekend of Wizardry, which only had one event so far. They have like mini events throughout the year, so they definitely have a community that they're trying to build in the Tacoma area, which is just a few hours away from me, so I go up to Tacoma sometimes. It is a Harry Potter specific event, so the actors that they invite are very niche, just like LeakyCon, so if you're not a Harry Potter fan, it isn't worth going. There is some good cosplays there, but since it is such a new convention, a lot of the like super amazing cosplayers around the country haven't really gone there yet. Price-wise, it is a little bit spendy, but it is worth the money because the moderators at the panel do a great job at orchestrating nice panels. There is a lot of like fun arts and crafts things that you can do at Weekend of Wizardry. There is a community at Weekend of Wizardry as well. Accessibility wise, I didn't really use accommodations because the lines weren't that bad, but I am involved in volunteering sort of for Weekend of Wizardry, so it feels weird not to have Weekend of Wizardry placed as first, but volunteering is actually why my ranking for Weekend of Wizardry is a little down. Just the volunteer side of things seems really chaotic, and like we have been in this limbo for such a long time where we didn't know when we were going to have another event. I have sort of stepped back from volunteering because it was causing me too much stress, and I think they don't necessarily do the greatest job at communicating on social media, which I was volunteering on social media, and yeah, I don't want to like hate on this convention because I know a lot of the people working the convention work really hard. I think that we just need a new head person at Weekend of Wizardry to sort of reform it a little bit, and I think it will be better. They are having a one-day event, but I don't get the sense that there's going to be any actors there this year, so I might not go, or I might go. And I liked how COVID sort of ruined this, but they were gonna try and do sort of like a Hogwarts feel, like you get to stay in the dorm rooms in the college that's near there, and I was liking that, but then COVID ruined those plans. I think one issue that Weekend of Wizardry keeps running into too, that I'm surprised that LeakyCon has been able to avoid this, is the fact that Warner Brothers has really started cracking down on people who are using Harry Potter and other Warner Brothers names in different events. So they're sort of really pissed at Weekend of Wizardry for claiming it was a Harry Potter event, so they had to change it to like saying Harry Potter fan event. They had to sort of like change it to Wizards of Washington, Wizards of Tacoma, something like that. So there's been a lot of changes that have been made because Warner Brothers just is cracking down on people. Warner Brothers is doing this to freaking like small independent creators too. I don't really understand what Warner Brothers is doing about that. But anyways, Weekend of Wizardry would go number 5, and I just would say that it's number 5 because I think it's very unique and because I think it has great panels. But I think it could be completely different now after COVID. We'll just have to wait and see. The next one on my list is the one that got bought out by a bigger convention, and that was Wizard World Portland, which has now been bought out by Fan Expo, which I'm very actually much looking forward to because Wizard World was getting really small, and that is part of the reason why Wizard World is so low on this list. It got really small. Like, I was meeting a big name guest and there was only 3 people in front of me at the convention. That's how small it got. But now that Fan Expo bought it, I'm really hopeful because Fan Expo gets a lot of guests and Fan Expo gets a lot of people that travel to all of their events. I really like how it is local to where I am. I think it is worth going to if you are local. I'm saying that it's worth going to even though it got bought out because I'm assuming that a lot of the things about Wizard World will be the same with Fan Expo. They weren't the greatest at accommodations, so I only used accommodations once when there's a really long line at a photo op. They had me sit in a chair off to the side and wait until last, which I liked, okay? I like waiting until last because I always feel really bad about going first in line with accommodations. However, the issue was that there was a line to get into the photo op area and I was trying to like signal the staff and be like, hey, I need help, I have a disability, and the staff like wasn't acknowledging me, and it took us being very forceful for them to be like, oh yeah, here's how the accommodations work. I also think they could really benefit, and I'm hoping that Fan Expo does this, they could benefit from doing some sort of sticker on the wristband to sort of signal that the person has a disability so that you don't have to explain your disability every time you ask for accommodations at different sections in the Comic-Con. So I think Fan Expo could drastically change Wizard World for the better, but I think Wizard World was still a pretty solid event. I mean, they had great guests, and I liked a lot of the other cosplayers that attended the Wizard World events. Next up on my list is Ace Comic Con. I went to Ace Comic Con in Seattle. Ace Comic Con is a money grab. So the thing is, they are very much relying on getting super big Marvel actors going, and there isn't a community there. There is barely any cosplayers. I saw maybe like 5 cosplayers when I went. Everything is super expensive, and it is simply just, you go to a panel for the actor, you get an autograph from the actor, you get a picture with the actor. It is simply just them turning as much money as possible using these big name actors. I also had an issue with Ace Comic Con where they wanted my mom to walk through the metal detector, and I was in a wheelchair and they didn't want me to go through the metal detector since I was in my wheelchair. So they took my wheelchair and they shoved me away from my mom and they let go of my wheelchair, and I was grateful for that moment that I could move my legs and stop my wheelchair, but I was like, no. You do not touch someone else's wheelchair, and especially if you touch their wheelchair, you do not push them away and let them just drive away, like fly away, okay? That was really messed up. I think they have actually pretty good communication because I had an issue where I wanted to get my photo signed, but the autograph time was like before the photo time, and I talked to them about it and they were able to help accommodate me with that. So I think that communication wise are good. They have good guests. I just don't think that cosplay community, accessibility, and price are very good for Ace Comic Con. Next up is Geekcraft Expo. Geekcraft Expo is a convention that is very small. It just has local exhibitors there and local crafters and local organizations. It took up a super small room in the convention center when I went. There was barely any cosplayers. There was no celebrity guests since it is more focused on the crafting side of things. I think accessibility wise it was pretty good. I saw people in wheelchairs that were able to easily get around because there was so much space available in the room that they were in. I think there is a little bit of a community element there, but I think that it's very weak. I think this convention needs a lot of changing, and it needs a lot of more advertising too, because I think that advertising really lacked, and that caused it to not have as many people in attendance, and it just made it not as fun. Price-wise, I mean, it's great. When I went, it was free. I don't know if they changed the ticket price. Communication-wise, they did pretty great. And yeah, I think that Geekcraft is worth going to if you like to see local vendors doing just crafty things. I'm not talking like Pokemon stuffed animals or anime figurines. No, it's very much crafty handmade things. So I think if you are into that, it's a good convention, but personally that isn't the main reason why I go to conventions, so it wasn't super worth going for me, and I probably won't go again. Oh, and also I should say I'm not going to go to Ace Comic Con again unless they have like one of the actors that I desperately want to meet that's going there. And then the next one, the second to last, is Washington State SummerCon. I know this is a lot of people's favorite if you are in the Pacific Northwest area, but I had a lot of issues with it, mainly just with accessibility. So they sucked at accommodating me. I had one of the staff members basically tell me that I was faking having a disability when I asked for accommodations. They cannot accommodate anybody with a disability. Like, I'm sure it's fine if you don't have a disability to go to Washington State SummerCon, but you can't tell someone that they're faking the disability when they ask for help, and you can't deny them accommodations because that is against the law. Like, I get that they are sort of new and didn't know how to accommodate me, but the way that they treated me was unacceptable. They have fairly good guests. I mean, the guests generally aren't like super big guests, but they are guests that like I liked and I feel like a lot of other people would like. I think the communication side of things and their social media side of things isn't the greatest. I haven't had necessarily the kindest communication with whoever runs the social media for the event. I think there's a good community for the event. I think there also isn't enough good communication at the actual event. Like, I couldn't find the photo ops the second time that I went, and there was like no maps or anything to signify where the photo ops were, and I eventually had to ask the army people who were there at the event. Also, it's worth noting this in the future won't matter as much once we get COVID under control, but they basically don't do anything for COVID. I'm serious. I mean, I went when COVID was really high and they didn't require masks, and in fact a lot of people were expressing they were very satisfied that they were not requiring any masks. I think in part it's in a more like right-wing city, which I don't think is necessarily the worst thing if you are right-wing yourself, but if you're left-wing, like, it's a little bit iffy. Like, I wouldn't wear any pride stuff when I went because it's a little bit like, you know. I think Washington State SummerCon is good for the price, but I think it needs to have a lot of improvement, and I am not going again unless they promise me that they improve their accessibility. And the final one on this list is the one that went bankrupt and refused to refund anyone when they canceled their events. That is Heroes and Villains Fan Fest / Walker Stalker Con. It sucked because I enjoyed the convention when I went. I mean, they don't really have a wide selection of vendors. It's very much just meeting the actors, but the actors did a great job there and the panels were really fun and I loved the event when I went. However, they basically went bankrupt, refused to refund everyone, and was not kind to anyone when they were trying to get refunds. They didn't refund vendors, they didn't refund guests. I think the only people who were able to get refunds is as soon as it canceled, if they went to their bank account and they refuted the claim on their credit card. So if Here's the Villains Fan Fest / Walker Stalker Con ever comes back, do not go unless you can 100% verify that there is a new owner, because I get that companies go bankrupt, but the way that they handled the situation was not okay. The way that they treated their guests was not okay. I feel like I need water because I've been talking so long. My throat's starting to get sore. But yeah, those were all the conventions that I went to and my thoughts on them and how I'd rank them. So the ones that I'd recommend going to are LeahyCon, VidCon, Emerald City Comic Con, and Rose City Comic Con. I think all conventions have problems. I think all conventions have great things to them. I think a lot of it just depends on what you're going to conventions for. So hopefully by talking about all these different ones, I was able to talk about like why you go to conventions and whether each of the conventions would be a good fit for you or not. Because it definitely is a fit thing. Like, some people, Ace Comic Con is a perfect fit for them, but for me it isn't, just because it felt like a money grab. But for some people, they just want to meet the big name guests, and that's okay. I'm going to a new convention called CouveCon this Saturday. This could change my ranking a little bit, but I'll just like add a little update after that happens in the description to like let you know where I would have ranked it on the list. It's a very small one, so I don't have super high hopes. Like, I have high hopes in the terms of like I like the guests that are going, but I don't have super high hopes in terms of a lot of times conventions first year aren't always the greatest. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it very informative. If you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to me if you haven't already. I upload videos twice a week, but my schedule may change or take a pause depending on how my dog is doing. I'm really freaking hoping that she gets better. Like, I know that this is sort of hopeless in the sense that she doesn't have that long left, but I'm just hoping that like she'll start eating food and that she'll start feeling more comfortable. Because I don't want to even think about the other situation. I just want her to be as happy and as comfortable for as long as she has left. Okay, I'm gonna go spend some time with my dog. I need to get something to drink because my throat feels like parched right now from talking so much. If you want to see pictures from all these conventions, head over to my Instagram. That is where I post all my pictures, and like all my stories, that's when I post like updates when I'm actually at the convention. And yeah, that's really all. I think I have like a few videos from LeakyCon and Emerald City Comic Con that I'll link down below where I talk about like what it's like at the convention. They're sort of vlogs, sort of not, because I mainly just talk in my hotel room, but I'll link those down in the description below too in case you want a more thorough sort of review of Emerald City Comic Con and LeakyCon. Yeah, I should stop rambling, so I'll see all of you later. Until next time, goodbye!